Moving in to our last team in the AFC South, we have the Tennessee Titans. Similar to the Colts, we need to see, is Will Levis the real deal? And now, I think he could be. I think with Brian Callahan at the helm, I've come around on the hiring, I feel like. And, you bring in Calvin Ridley for a good amount of money. You bring in Tyler Boyd. You pay Tony Pollard. You go out and draft J.C. Latham, and you now have really like three formidable O-linemen. Like, we hope Peter Skoronski can take the step. J.C. Latham could be a dog. You have Lloyd Cushenberry at center. So you have more. Peter Skoronski and Latham are still question marks, but they're like exclamation point question marks. Like, they should be good. So you have like 3 of the 5 figured out, which is
they
not
should
bad.
at least be average NFL linemen. Like, so, that's their floor, hopefully.
That's okay. I do have a little bit of issue with the team building. I do. I still do. I think corner being one of the most volatile positions in the league, you trade for L'Jarius Sneed, you pay him, you bring in Calvin Ridley, you pay him. If Will Levis isn't the guy, I mean, like, D-Hop's probably here one more, like, this year, and then he's gone. Tyler Boyd's a little bit older, so it's like, it almost feels like, and I understand this, like, let's say you're strictly trying to win a Super Bowl on the Will Levis rookie contract window. Well, then you've set your team up for success, because Will Levis, second-round pick, don't have a fifth-year option on him, right? And you should have the line on the offense. You should have the pass catchers. But like, I'm also interested to see how the defense shakes out, going from a Mike Vrabel to a Brian Callahan. I think the O-line will be fine because they brought in Bill Callahan as well, who's known for having O-line. But I think, going back to our narrative, I'm just saying, like, overall, this year is all about finding out if Will Levis can be their franchise quarterback. And I think they've done everything needed in order to put him in a position to succeed. But I also feel like you're just kind of setting yourself up for, like, okay, let's say he plays well this year, Dobbs, okay? Like, I'm not going to say well. Let's say, like, a little above average, right? And then he plays average next year. Well, you either got to extend him, and these other guys are getting a little bit older. Like, don't forget, like, Calvin Ridley's, like, I believe 29. Like, he's up there. Tony Pollard wasn't really productive last year. So it's kind of like you're in a very, like, tight window, it feels like. So do you think with the current situation that Will Levis could be the guy for them? Because I just want to make one point. Show me one ripped quarterback that's been really good.
That is actually hilarious. Okay. It's food for thought. No, I think, look, realistically, when you take the tape from last year, it is definitely like the definition of like high and low, right? Like there's some stuff on there where you're like, oh my God, like he's like years ahead of where he should be in that department. But then there's other areas where you're like, all right, like this is the type of stuff that we expected, right? Like the growth that needs to happen and it's to be expected, right? But I'm going to admit, he gave me a lot more of the positive flashes than the negative ones, especially from what I expected coming in this rookie year. So as of right now, I think if you're the Titans, you do feel damn good about having Will Levis in the building. Like, he really could actually be your guy long term, which is awesome, right? But now to your point about kind of the direction with the roster building and everything, look, everything you said is spot on. And that's actually exactly what I was going to say. Like, if we're only worried right now about like staying competitive for the next like 2 or 3 years and like having a surefire, like, hopefully, and that's the problem. That's really what makes it kind of makes this such a tough evaluation from our perspective, is like, as much as that they did have a huge improvement this off season, you're playing in the AFC. You're playing in a division of teams that have already shown that they are.
It's going to be a bloodbath this year.
It's a bloodbath. Like, even with the roster like this, with the jump they made, they really are not even far from guaranteed a playoff spot, especially with the youth and inexperience of the O line. Like we were talking about, if that O line doesn't live up to or make the jumps that we expect them to, all of a sudden, even Will Levis's life is much different than it could be if they make that jump. There's a lot of hypotheticals in place. And then over to the defense, right? Like the biggest thing is it's going to be very interesting to see how his defense changes this year. You feel definitely very good about some personnel, but then there's other things in this defense where it's like, I still feel like, you know what I mean? Namely Kenneth Murray starting. All right, no, unnecessary shot. When we go across, when you go across this depth chart, it's just the bottom line is this: this team is still not a championship contender. This what makes it so tricky, though. It's like they're headed for sure in the right direction, but in the AFC right now, all the teams that have loaded rosters and you built more of a short-term window, that's what's so tricky about it. Is it's like, Hunter, if they don't make some absolute Tennessee Music City magic happen over the next 2 or 3 years, where is the roster going to be? Because to your point, okay, best case scenario, we have a really, really good O-line and a really good quarterback. But outside of that, like, right, okay, I mean, the bottom line is just a lot of their good players are getting old now. Let's just like the simple, because I don't want to like sell them short like they don't have good young guys on the roster, right? Like they certainly do, and they still have guys that are like that could enter into their prime, that could. But that's the key word. I don't think you really go through this roster again besides the O-line. Maybe end Tajay Spears. Okay, I got to give Tajay a shout. But where you're looking at them and you're saying, yeah, those guys are going to be coming into their own in the next few years. I just feel like there's really not a lot of those guys on the Titans roster, and that's kind of what makes this evaluation so tough for them.
Tony Pollard, 27, Tyler Boyd, 29, Calvin Ridley, 29, D-Hop, 32. So it's like your top three receivers are 30. They're 30 years old. Like, they definitely still have stuff left in the tank, but we know how fast players can fall off a cliff. And Tony Pollard, I know why they brought him. I can guess why they brought him in. One of the best pass blocking backs in the league. But like you said, Dobbs, it's hard. Like, it's really hard to see like these certain players like that are gonna fill their spots. Like Treylon Burks, I don't think anyone's counting on him at this point.
He's on the roster bubble, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure right now, if the last report I read about a week ago was correct, he's not even like a surefire to make the roster at this point, which is insane. But like,
I mean, I like Tajay Spears, and the rookie Jaquan Jackson could be an interesting play. But I mean, I also question, this is not Will Levis related. This is more like of an organization thing. Okay, they fired Vrabel, and I'm not trying to get on the firing Vrabel, Brian Callahan. I understand if you want to go an offensive route. I get it. I understand. They fire Vrabel, who a lot of people, and he's jobless right now, so I don't know how the league views him, but a lot of people consider to be one of the best coaches in the NFL, okay? I'm more talking about the GM in this situation. T'Vondre Sweat had issues in college, gets a DUI like a week before the draft, and then they take him in the second round. Then there were some issues with practicing and training camp, and he goes, I don't know, ask the coach. And maybe they overblew it, but like, it just feels like they just took the guy. Like, they didn't care about any of the character stuff, and I'm not a GM. I'm not interviewing this guy. I'm not, getting down to the nitty-gritty with him. And I'm not trying to judge. Like, hopefully he turns it around. And it has nothing to do with Sweat and more about the fact of, like, the GM's decision-making in a year could look like very, very questionable if the Titans are bad. If they're bad, their players are old, they took a guy who had character concerns, and you fired what most would consider one of the better head coaches in the league.
No, and you know what? Now that you're saying all that, Hunter, I haven't even we've thought about it, but I haven't really like put it into an exact thought like this. Like, do you think that it's safe to say at this point the Titans are just the biggest question mark in the entire league?
So that's funny because I will agree with you. I do think they have the potential to be, and I'm not as good because I don't think Will Levis is CJ Stroud, but could they be this year's Texans? Like, they could be a
they have
team
the
that is
polarity.
just
They
really
have the
good.
polarity.
That's what
like
I'm
they
saying.
can either
Like,
be a bottom feeder or a playoff team. And it's
out
kind of
of
like
all the teams we've done so far, Dobbs, and we've done, four other divisions, they're the team that I'm most confused about. I don't like they have all the talent in the world to be a good team, right? Like they have enough on offense and defense to be a good team. I just need to see it on paper, or I need to see it on I'm looking at it on paper. I need to see it on the field to really know. And I'm not trying to hate on the Titans. I really am not. I just want to put it out there that it's like, this is a very optimistic view of the Titans of what they could be, bringing in these older players to compete. And maybe their plan is, we don't care if we're going to win the Super Bowl in the next 2-3 years. We want to know if Will Levis is the guy. And you've done pretty much everything you needed to do in order to ensure that, outside of maybe getting a new right guard and right tackle. But you can't fix everything in one offseason. You went out and got one of the best corners in the game. You go get Calvin Ridley, and you have now 3 good receivers like Joe Burrow had in Cincinnati when Brian Callahan was there to develop their quarterback. So, with that being said, the Titans have a very promising year ahead of them. But at the same time, it could be a year that after this year, if they don't perform, you look back and go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have made that move. Maybe we jumped the gun a little bit fast on this one.
And you know what? And to that point, I think it's almost, again, you have to respect it. You respect the aggression to go build a competitive team, but that's when you have to temper expectations with reality and kind of play like the long game. And that's one thing that we can agree on is, well, there's no doubt, all the best GMs in the league that retain their jobs long term, they understand that it's a game of getting your window in the right spot and making sure that what you do aligns to have your window come up in the right spot. And as long as you and the ownership group are in good, clear communication about how that window is going to open, and you're doing the things every offseason you have to do to prop that window open a little bit more, that's really all your job should be. I think nowadays, unfortunately, too many GMs, I don't blame them, Hunter. I think the problem is all the pressure of social media. Every second of every fucking day is documented. There's no downtime. There's no, right? Everybody wants an answer and a solution constantly. So it's never been tougher to have a job where your job is to build the long-term structure of the team, but everybody wants long-term results in a short-term period. Right. And it just is unrealistic. So is this going to be another case of a GM just doing the most, literally? And I'm not, again, not knocking it, doing the most in terms of like they are trying to build a winning team. Yeah. But did you build a winning team at the right window? And I think that's kind of the final thoughts that we should leave Titans fans with. Because again, I'm not saying you did it. I'm not saying you did or didn't. We're going to find out this year. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, that would be my overall consensus on the Titans. Well, this has been team previews for every team in the AFC South. If you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe. Leave a like. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win the AFC South. If you haven't already, go check out our other team previews for the NFC and AFC North, and then the AFC and NFC East. After this, you will see the NFC South and the ASC and NFC West. They'll be coming out after this. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your night.